The United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, abbreviated UNESCO, has released guidelines that will serve as an international initiative to essentially silence everyone who opposes things like sweeping public health measures and questions climate change under the guise of safeguarding freedom of expression and access to information online. Let's dig in.
Because they don't have accurate information, they decide not to vaccine themselves. You have an actual cost for the public health system.
Without facts, you can't have truth. Without truth, you can't have trust.
Tamara Ugolini here with Rebel News to feature this seemingly perpetual necessity proposed by unelected, unaccountable globalist entities that the general public must be nannied. We are infantilized constantly, and the powers that be continue on that path when attempting to manage online information that we're able to access. See, on Monday, November 6, UNESCO unveiled its global action plan against disinformation online. Called the Guidelines for the Governance of Digital Platforms, the 59-page plan is apparently to safeguard freedom of expression and access to information through a multi-stakeholder approach. UNESCO's Director General, that's Audrey Azoulay, took to X to share this unprecedented consultation with more than 10,000 contributions by 134 member states, also called countries. Azoulay believes that, and I quote, "In order to protect access to information, we must regulate these platforms without delay, while at the same time protecting freedom of expression and human rights." This all came as a result of extensive worldwide consultations backed by a global opinion survey underlining the urgent need for action. They use the hashtag Internet for Trust. In a video interview with the chief of the section of freedom of expression and the safety of journalists, Guilherme Canella Godoy, says that not regulating misinformation can lead to costly public health happenings. For instance, if people don't get vaccinated.
We also need to think this as an investment, because imagine the costs, the real costs for democracies of the problems these things can generate, or the real costs for the public health system, mental health, but also during the pandemic. If people, because they don't have accurate information, they decide not to vaccine themselves, you have an actual cost for the public health system. So we need to think that these eventual costs that the companies, the governments, because they need to put in place new regulatory models, etc., they will need to put some budget aside, but the benefits for the entire public system, they are absolutely much bigger than the eventual cost they will have here.
Oddly, he also mentions Adolf Huxley's dystopian novel titled Brave New World, which depicts a futuristic society where technology and genetic engineering have been used to create a highly controlled world where individuality and personal freedoms are sacrificed for strict adherence to conformist behavior. That seems eerily familiar.
I told to my kids, you can't use a source from an oil company because they have conflicts of interest with this issue. So you need to look for others, what others are saying about the same subject. So I think we need all to learn a healthier way of dealing with this brave new world, to quote Huxley about that. And if we all do that, it will be better, because we will try to engage with each other and with the content in a different way. We shouldn't be looking to patronize people. I think we need to empower people. Yeah. But to empower people, there is also structural changes that are necessary. For instance, and they are in the UNESCO guidelines, these companies, they should be more transparent in the way they deal with the content moderation and the content curation, so that people, citizens that are interacting with these platforms, they understand, for instance, that their news feed in Facebook or in Instagram or in Snapchat, I don't know, all the different technologies, they are not by chance. There is an algorithm that decides what you are receiving based on your own interests.
UNESCO claims that these guidelines are designed to create, or what they refer to as, an enabling environment that upholds freedom of expression and access to information while simultaneously combating online hate and misinformation. The document emphasizes the duty of various stakeholders to uphold these responsibilities, outlining specific roles for states, digital platforms, intergovernmental organizations, and civil society as a whole to allegedly promote these human rights. Interestingly, the guidelines also say that the states should refrain from imposing measures to prevent or disrupt general access to the dissemination of information offline and online, including internet shutdowns. Could that be an indirect criticism of the Justin Trudeau Liberals' commitment to online safety, through which the government is using various pieces of ambiguously worded legislation to control and censor content found online? Here in Canada, we have Federal Bill C-11. It's the Online Streaming Act that gives sweeping powers to Canada's Broadcasting Oversight Committee, called the CRTC. We also have Bill C-18, the Online News Act, that has seen the preemptive banning of Canadian news content from social media platforms like Meta and Google. Then, of course, there's also Bill C-36, an amendment to the Criminal Code of Canada, which criminalizes any potential harmful or offensive speech found online. And if that wasn't enough, the proposed Online Harms Act, which would serve as a reinforcement tool for the three bills just mentioned, all made possible through the plan to establish new regulators under a digital safety commissioner who would be tasked with overseeing and improving content found online and its moderation. But wait, there's more. Of course, there's always more. At the end of October, the Liberals also introduced a global declaration on information integrity online that commits to addressing the erosion of information integrity found online, which includes the spread of misinformation and disinformation campaigns by state and non-state actors, by implementing necessary and appropriate measures, including legislation, to address information integrity and platform governance. While the government claims that it will refrain from unduly restricting human rights online, especially the freedom of opinion and expression, under the guise of countering disinformation, can we really trust this doublespeak from the same government that, in February of 2022, seized the bank accounts and the assets of peaceful protesters and those who donated to the Freedom Convoy for simply disagreeing with the ongoing violation of human rights due to COVID-19 related public health measures? Actions that were taken without due process or clear legal justification?
The government is issuing an order with immediate effect under the Emergencies Act, authorizing Canadian financial institutions to temporarily cease providing financial services where the institution suspects that an account is being used to further the illegal blockades and occupations.
Meanwhile, UNESCO states that these guidelines will apparently cultivate an internet of trust. That sounds a lot like the Trusted News Initiative, the TNI, founded in 2019 by UK state broadcaster BBC and its global big tech and media partners like the CBC, Google, Meta, and YouTube, with big pharma backers who, of course, required algorithmic intervention into the proliferation of anti-vaxxers found online. They pay fact-checkers like the ones that falsely fact-checked me a few months ago, who are not at all accountable and that lack the capacity to correct their factually incorrect claims. I tried, to no avail, to do just that. In that report, I debunk their claims, but I also highlight the vast conflicts of interest associated with fact-checkers and social media tech giants, with multinational pharmaceutical and biotechnological conglomerates. It's a very twisty, turning, convoluted situation. But to further highlight, check out UNESCO's Internet for Trust video from the global conference that they held in Paris in February of this year.
Without facts, you can't have truth. Without truth, you can't have trust. Without these three, we have no democracy.
Information disruption is by definition a global problem.
And what I did was try to hack their own system. I used the same keywords to get recommended into the extremists.
Interestingly, in April of 2021, the UN Special Rapporteur Irene Khan published a report for the General Assembly on the promotion and protection of the right to freedom of opinion and expression. In that report, Khan rightfully notes that there is no universally accepted definition of disinformation and that a lack of consensus underlines the complex, intrinsically political, and contested nature of the concept. It was also noted that harm is defined in overly broad terms, which has opened the possibility for abuse and arbitrary decision-making. Often, the prescribed punishment is excessively harsh and disproportionate and can have a chilling effect on freedom of expression. Nonetheless, Khan states that freedom may be restricted to protect national security, public order, or public health or morals. She wrote, justifying the suppression of this supposed right at any whim that the globalists deem necessary. And so there you have it, freedom of expression, until you don't. And UNESCO, which is another unelected globalist agency funded by our governments, that is, by us, the taxpayers, is advising back to our governments on how to ensure that only the prevailing mainstream orthodoxy is amplified online, and it's the only messaging that you will have access to. Seems to me that these growing globalist online censorship plans threaten the very essence of free expression with far-reaching consequences for democracy and open discourse. For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini. If you agree that remaining diligent and protecting the cornerstone of our democratic societies through free expression is of the utmost importance moving forward in a digital world, then please consider signing up to our mailing list at stopthecensorship.ca. At that website, you can also stay up to date with all of our reports and action items on how to get involved. That's stopthecensorship.ca.